Macron's approval ratings have been, and continue to be, in freefall. Before having a look at what Macron has been doing since his ascent to power, it reveals much to have another look at the political climate that saw his rise and the factors that conspired in his favour. Political legitimacy is becoming a problem for Emmanuel Macron, which seems odd considering his presentation as a rising star, a political outsider that managed to galvanise the masses. This metrosexual, fresh political face in office, in actual fact, was and is something entirely different. The two bulwark parties of French politics, the Republicans and the Socialist Party, have traditionally absorbed the majority of votes by occupying the political centre. However, with Fillon's winning of the primaries for the Republicans in 2016 and Benoît Hamon's victory months later as leading socialist candidate, a mould was broken. Both Fillon and Hamon occupied the more fringe and ideological segments of their respective parties. Fillon was a Republican with a strong emphasis on identity and immigration, while Benoît Hamon was a socialist in a similar vein to Jeremy Corbyn in Britain. Suddenly, the two centrist parties in France began to exist in spaces previously owned by the so-called extreme parties, Marine Le Pen's Front National and Jean-Luc Mélenchon's France Unbowed. To confuse things even more, Fillon was hit by scandal, quickly lost ground, and what many saw as a surefire place in the second round versus Le Pen quickly became a fantasy. Lastly, Macron was able to present himself as the only centrist candidate and gained the allegiance of François Bayrou and his democratic movement, along with all the legitimacy that came with it. Marine Le Pen, although achieving historic success for her party in both the first and second round, failed to beat Emmanuel Macron. He was a strong Europhile and found greater sympathy amongst the French population in opposition to Le Pen's fervent anti-Euro message, as advised by her then chief advisor, Florian Philippot. But regardless, the message really wasn't all that important. It was predictable that a Republican front would surge to combat Le Pen, irrespective of the message, and Macron found himself the benefactor of this. This isn't because the French fell in love with the man. No, it simply posed itself as a necessity. Macron only gained 24% of the vote in the first round of the elections, and that is his mandate as president. Next came the French legislative elections. Initially, this was thought to be an uphill struggle for Macron. In my video after he took presidency, I stressed that I thought it doubtful that he would gain the majority in the National Assembly necessary for him to enact the changes he envisaged for France. Well, I was wrong. Macron gained a staggering majority. Coupled with Bayrou's democratic movement, he managed to amass 350 seats of a possible 577. At the same time, the parliamentary left collapsed into nothingness, losing a whopping 286 seats, and the right hemorrhaged 93. Marine Le Pen managed to increase her party standing from 2 seats to 8, but this is considered an embarrassment for a party predicted to get at least 15, enough to form a parliamentary group. As it stands currently, the Front National has zero influence in the National Assembly. Also important, Mélenchon gained 17 seats. This strengthened Macron's hand, but it was yet to get stronger. Just a few days after Macron's electoral victory, François Bayrou and his democratic movement surrendered all cabinet posts they earned amid claims that EU funds were used to pay party workers. The sudden exit of Bayrou essentially gave Macron total control of the national assemblies, as one of the few voices with authority that could have stood up to him became suddenly subdued. So, not only are there no voices inside the National Assembly powerful enough to question Macron's actions, but also no voice within Macron's parliamentary grouping. Furthermore, many of those that do occupy ministerial positions in Macron's government have never been elected and were poached from civil society, not politics. He basically has total control. But you may say, Macron has the legitimacy. He and his party alone secured enough seats to form an absolute majority. Indeed, this is correct, but the National Assembly elections had a measly turnout of barely 40%. Macron can speak for no more than a quarter of the population, yet holds all of the cards. Never has a president's popularity felt like Macron's since 1995. But Macron's popularity has always been a mirage in a political desert without a viable centre. Despite having earned little but beating a party almost universally reviled by the French establishment, and coming first in an election with one of the lowest turnouts in French history, he pledges to carry out the controversial labour reforms he's had in mind since his departure from Hollande's government in 2015. These involve massively reducing the hefty code of work that governs France's labour laws, increasing the ability of firms to hire and fire workers at will, with the aims of liberalising France's economy and bringing down France's stubbornly high unemployment rate of 10%. What's more, he's doing this via executive order, bypassing any potential parliamentary debate. The result so far has been protests throughout the country that will no doubt continue. The problem for the electorate is there is no viable political opposition. No parliamentary group can block the reforms, and so street politics is all those dissatisfied can do. In France, the unions can quite literally grind the country to a halt. Perhaps they will. A lot of Macron's campaign was centred around image. A youthful, competent, charismatic and energetic individual from the outside, suavely weaving his way to victory. However, this image is slowly giving way to what seems like pompous arrogance. An attempt to create an official First Lady position in France, which of course his wife would occupy, was met with fierce opposition and rejected swiftly. He's referred to his desired style of rule as Jupiterian, in reference to the Roman god Jupiter, likened his labour reforms to the Copernican revolution, and referred to those who criticised them as slackers. He reneged on his promise to protect military spending, slashed the military budget by almost €1 billion. The head of the military resigned in response, to which Macron reminded army generals at an annual garden party, "I am the boss." I should make myself clear. I'm not saying Macron is an awful ruler or that the hefty and outdated code of work that French employers must abide by is untouchable and should never be reworked. No. My point is, Macron has been making bold moves since being in office and has done so with an incredibly flimsy democratic mandate, which goes a long way to explain why his support, tenuous to begin with, has plummeted. So, what of potential opposition? Jean-Luc Mélenchon has taken the mantle, claiming to be the only viable political voice to combat Macron's labour reforms, which he's labelled a coup d'etat, and he's spearheaded protests on the 23rd of September. Indeed, his party France Unbowed is still a unified force and can act as a united front against Macron's proposals, if not in parliament then certainly on the streets. Who else is there? The traditional left have been decimated and are a fractured mess, and the traditional right are in disarray also until a leadership contest in December decides who steers the ship. Current favourite to win is Laurent Wauquiez, a hardliner on immigration and identity who ruffles feathers among the more traditionally minded higher-ups, some of whom have been given ministerial positions in Macron's government. He's been criticised for not coming out against Le Pen strongly enough in the second round of the French presidential bid and allowing for potential porosity between the Republicans and the Front National. However, at this point, any unified strategic alliances between the two parties, apart from very localised and isolated instances, seem a long way off. Indeed, perhaps the election of Laurent Wauquiez could continue the same problems that brought Macron to power anyway. If the right continues its rightward drift, the centre stays vacant, then that gives Macron the ability to mobilise the centrist vote yet again. And what of the Front National? Currently they're beset by turmoil also. Schisms in the party were already forming throughout the campaign as many disagreed with party strategy. At the behest of Florian Philippot, Marine Le Pen's right-hand man, the campaign focused strongly on the euro and France's sovereignty, as opposed to immigration and identity. Many felt Marine was out of her depth on these issues, and should have stuck with what she knew, especially so after a blundering debate against Macron. Following a lacklustre performance in the legislative elections, Philippot was ousted from his position as advisor and shrouded in suspicion, as many feared his think tank, the Patriots, was prepping itself to become a splinter party. Philippot failed to signal total loyalty to Le Pen and the party, and resigned. Whether he will resurface as the leader of a rival party, we will see. I honestly doubt it will make a significant difference. In 1999, the influential Bruno Maigret left the party and actually took a sizable contingent of activists with him. He founded the National Republican Movement but failed fantastically, only able to swipe 0.3% of the vote in 2004. The Front National itself is currently in a state of flux. There is no legitimate challenge to Le Pen's leadership, especially so now Marine Le Pen, her niece, has taken steps back from politics. At present, Marine Le Pen is liaising with membership and supporters to gauge platform changes that will be sedimented at a party conference in early 2018. This will also be accompanied by a name change for the party. The story of Macron is one of circumstance. It was a perfect storm that saw his rise, and a coalescence of opportunities have allowed him to strengthen his hand far beyond what his actual support warrants. Is this a criticism of the man? Well, it depends on how you interpret it all. He's a master politician to have played the situation as he has done. In any case, muscling his policies through without checks and balances is the position he and the French find themselves in, and with little alternative. For now. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you liked the video, don't forget to click like and subscribe. If you didn't, click dislike, leave a comment and tell me where I went wrong. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons. It's thanks to you guys that these videos are regular. As always, if it's within your means to do so, please do consider becoming a Patreon yourself. Thanks a lot guys, and until next time.